Chapter 30:18. He didn't even care about his own injuries as he forced his bleeding body to move towards Dmo Xian's direction. Overlord, everything. Everything is a conspiracy by the Palace of Darkness. Hell Palace didn't know about it beforehand. Not knowing if it was because of Dmo Xian's intimidating aura. Or was it because the wounds on his body had been pulled apart by his movements? Xia Ba's voice kept trembling. Overlord, no, it's me, I'm willing. I'm willing to lead the Hell Palace to destroy the Palace of Darkness. I hope the Overlord won't vent your anger on the Hell Palace. At this moment, Xia Ba's face was covered with blood and his extremely ferocious face was full of flattery. He tried his best to appease Dmo Xian so that he wouldn't vent his anger on the Hell Palace. The reason why the Hell Palace was called the Hell of the Earth Realm was that it made people tremble in fear. They would try their best not to provoke them. Not only because they were a bunch of fearless lunatics, but also because they were united. Because they were not recognized by the world. Because they were all abandoned by the world. Therefore, when they reorganized into a big family, they had no choice but to cooperate. They especially cherished it. For evil arts, for becoming stronger. They could use any means. However, all of this was because they wanted to protect their own little home. So, from the beginning, Xia Ba and Leng Yan didn't seem to respect each other in words. But they never turned their backs on each other. They never had the thought of abandoning each other and running away. Because of this, for the Hell Palace, Xia Ba was willing to lower his noble head. He lowered his head, he showed his weakness. But it didn't ease Dmo Xian's expression. Dmo Xian's eyes were cold, and there was no emotion on his peerless face. He stared at Xia Ba quietly. His deep and treacherous peach blossom eyes exuded an extremely dangerous aura. He just stood there, not saying a word. But it made people feel that he was like a devil from the hell. The air was frozen and the atmosphere was cold. Xia Ba's forehead was covered with cold sweat. His heart thumped anxiously, and his hands were about to pierce through his flesh. Until Xia Ba's face was pale and he wanted to continue pleading. The man's cold and emotionless voice slowly rang out, "I will personally destroy the Palace of Darkness." His voice was cold and thin, and his eyes were ice-cold. Xia Ba's eyes widened as his heart skipped a beat and his body stiffened on the spot. The Overlord is not going to accept his offer, his overtures. But Dmo Xian's indifferent voice sounded again. He only spat out 2 words when he said that. It made Xia Ba's heart rise to his throat. Dmo Xian narrowed his shimmering peach blossom eyes and a dangerous aura started to spread out from his surroundings. His coquettish thin lips curled into a dangerous arc as he said word by word, "I won't take your lives." The words seemed to have given Xia Ba and Leng Yan great hope. Both of them raised their heads in delight as they looked at Dmo Xian in shock. At this moment, they no longer looked as arrogant as before. However, their happiness had not yet spread out in their hearts. Dmo Xian's next sentence made the expressions on both of their faces stiffen on their faces. Chapter 30:19. Dmo Xian's thin lips curled into a sneer. The person in his arms. He pampered her, doted on her, couldn't bear for her to be hurt or wronged. 2 scums from the Hell Palace dared to hurt his little Luo, to such an extent. Still thinking he would let them off. Still thinking of using death to escape punishment. It wasn't just these 2 scums. The Hell Palace and the Palace of Darkness. All had to pay the price for what they had done today. Dmo Xian's lips curled up even more. His almond-shaped eyes were glistening and surging violently. Boom, boom, boom. Dmo Xian unleashed his profound energy from his entire body, shocking the surrounding air, as it kept on exploding with explosive sounds. Xia Ba's body was still swaying. It was suddenly blasted apart by this explosion. So shocked that he knelt on the ground. His knees landed heavily on the rubble that was scattered all over the ground. The sharp stones pierced into his knees. Sia Ba's face turned pale, struggling to get up. However, before he could move, an overwhelming pressure pressed down on his back. Like 1,000 pounds pressing down on him. He couldn't even move. Those disciples of the Palace of Darkness who were still alive listened to the Wolf Saint Law's command. Under this powerful force, one by one, they exploded and died. The exploded minced meat and blood gradually stained the ground. The shocking thing was, in this space, it wasn't just the disciples of the Palace of Darkness who were surrounded. There were also the Imperial Palace disciples and other Miao tribesmen. But this violent surge of profound energy bypassed the Imperial Palace disciples and the Miao tribesmen. All of it hit the disciples of the Palace of Darkness. Aw, aw, aw. Save us. Assistant Palace Master, save us. We don't want to die. Overlord, spare us. Spare us. Countless cries for help resounded through the sky. But no matter how they cried for help, how they wailed, it couldn't appease Dmo Xian's anger. Blood stained the ground. The surrounding was destroyed, there was almost no place to stand. Facing this scene, Dmo Xian's expression didn't change at all. Only when he looked down at the unconscious girl in his arms, his cold and stiff face had a trace of gentleness. He raised his hand. His slender fingers gently caressed Yiqing Luo's face. This was just the interest. Now, his little Luo heir was more important. Dmo Xian's brows turned even gentler. He held Yiqing Luo's little hand in one hand as he placed it by his lips and gave it a light kiss. Gazing at Yiqing Luo's gaze, it was so gentle that water could be pinched out. Kill everyone from the Dark Nether Palace. However, when his lips left the back of Yiqing Luo's hand, a clear and melodious voice followed. He lowered his voice as if he was worried that he would wake up the person in his arms. His face was also gentle. But the words that came out of his mouth were bone-chilling. Dmo Xian's vision shot towards a certain direction. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept over. Descending from the sky, a snow-white nine-tailed fox with 9 tails dancing wildly in the wind stood steadily in front of Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian's eyes lit up. Dmo Xian gently hugged Yiqing Luo, as he slowly stepped onto the 9-tailed fox. It was accompanied by his icy cold voice, "Bring the 2 people from Hell Palace back to the Imperial Palace's dungeon, use profound ice shackles to lock them up." Standing on Little Nine's back, Dmo Xian sat down, letting the young lady lean into his arms in a comfortable position. Chapter 30-20. When Xia Ba and Lang Yan heard that, they instantly turned pale with fright. Lang Yan gave out a woo-woo sound as he panted heavily. His face was totally unrecognizable, only that pair of eyes were opened wide, filled with a vicious haze. Xia Ba clenched his teeth tightly as he clenched his fists, trying his best to suppress the anger in his heart. There were legends regarding Dmo Xian. Even for them, this bunch of lunatics who only knew how to cultivate evil arts and only knew how to hunt strange prey, they had all heard of it. Even if they were at their peak, they might not be able to defeat Dmo Xian if they joined hands. Not to mention the fact that they were badly injured after being tortured by Yiqing Luo. They totally had no way to resist. Overlord. Xia Ba's eyes turned red as he refused to give up and tried to negotiate with Dmo Xian. However, Dmo Xian, whose heart was filled with Yiqing Luo's injuries, totally had no mood to bother about them. Just as Xia Ba was about to charge forward unwillingly, a stench filled with a fishy smell blew across his face, directly onto Xia Ba's face. Following that, he saw 9 white tails sweeping past his eyes. Xia Ba's expression instantly turned as black as charcoal. Earlier, he was defeated by Nine-Tailed Fox's fart. His eyes were filled with viciousness as he clenched his teeth so hard that it made a grinding sound. Little Nine arrogantly flicked his tail as he turned into a white shadow, disappearing into the horizon. Yiqing Luo was in a daze, and from time to time, she could feel a raging fire burning within her body. Just as he was struggling to expel the burning sensation, he felt a chill run down his spine. But a warm big palm gently held her little hand. And a gentle voice, whispering into her ear. She couldn't hear clearly what that voice was saying. But her heart inexplicably felt at peace. Even that burning feeling in her body, gradually extinguished in her heart. And in a blur, she felt someone using a warm, soft towel, brushing against her skin bit by bit. Vaguely, she also smelled an extremely familiar and pleasant scent. It made her greedily want to smell it for a while more. She moaned comfortably and once again fell into a deep slumber. The surroundings were quiet and silent. Yiqing Luo's curly long eyelashes trembled slightly. Suddenly, she felt that there was something in her arms that was moving and moving. Then, she felt a furry thing hugging her neck. "Master, Master, you're finally awake." The sweet and crisp voice of a child rang in his ears. Yiqing Luo was still in a daze, her long eyelashes blinked once again. What came into view was an extremely cute cat face. Yiqing Luo's brain was sluggish for a moment before she spat out two words, "Chi-Chi." Chi-Chi's little head immediately rubbed against Yiqing Luo's face. "Our woo-woo master has been unconscious for 3 days and 3 nights. Chi-Chi is so worried about master, so worried." Chi-Chi's little pink tongue kept licking Yiqing Luo's face. 3 days and 3 nights. No wonder she felt weak all over, and even her mind was a little slow. Are they all right? Yiqing Luo had just opened her mouth when she felt her voice was unbearably hoarse and her lips were extremely dry. She frowned and stopped talking. Chi-Chi's little body suddenly jumped from the side of the bed onto the table. Its slender white tail rolled up the quilt on the table and leapt back again. Chapter 30:21. Settled. Yiqing Luo recalled the warm embrace before she fell into a coma. Also, when she was unconscious, that extremely gentle touch, that gentle whisper, and that aura that made her feel at ease. Her pupils dilated slightly. "Chi-Chi, Xian He, the poison in his body, has it been cured?" "It's cured." Chi-Chi shook her head and nodded vigorously. Old man Gue Wu said that Overlord Master not only cured the poison in his body, but in the process of curing it, he went through a tribulation. He broke through the barrier of advancement. Which meant to say, Dmo Xian had advanced. Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up slightly as her lips couldn't help but curled upwards. Ah Xian's profound grade was already unfathomable and mysterious to the extreme. Breaking through and advancing was an extremely difficult thing. Now he was able to advance. It was also a blessing in disguise. Yiqing Luo's heart had just calmed down when she thought of something as the smile on her lips faded, then ee is fine, everyone is fine. Chi-Chi licked Yiqing Luo's face. "Master, lie down properly and don't talk anymore." Chi-Chi will tell Master slowly. Under Chi-Chi's insistent gaze, Yiqing Luo slowly lay back on the bed. Chi-Chi nestled in her arms and told Yiqing Luo about what happened after Yiqing Luo had fainted. From Chi-Chi's mouth, Yiqing Luo knew that she was now in the imperial palace. This was Dmo Xian's room. And the 2 people from the Hell Palace were imprisoned in the most secret dungeon in the imperial palace. Over at the Seclusion Palace, those disciples who went to the Miao tribe had all lost their lives. Only one person from the Seclusion Palace managed to escape alive. That person was the Fox Saint technique. The reason why the fox saint technique was able to escape was because the wolf saint technique had exchanged his life for hers. When Yiqing Luo heard her man's boyfriend power to the max, Yiqing Luo's eyes couldn't help but start to bubble with pink bubbles. No wonder he was her Xian. He was so handsome that it made one suffocated. As for that fox saint technique, escaping, to her, was the biggest torture. The wolf saint technique died to save her. In the future, even if she was still alive, she would always remember the wolf saint technique and be filled with endless guilt towards it. Living like this was the most painful. So many disciples from the Palace of Darkness have died, over at the Palace of Darkness. Is there any movement? Yiqing Luo looked at Chi and asked. Chi shook its head. Master, you don't know. When you fainted in Overlord Master's arms, Overlord Master was so terrifying. He looked like a demon that had just walked out of hell. If it wasn't for the fact that I was worried about you, Overlord, you would have killed those disciples of Dark Palace with your own hands. Speaking of the scene at that time, Chi-Chi's tiger eyes opened wide. Dizun Master is really angry. The Palace of Gloomy Shadows has suffered such a great loss. How would they dare to cause trouble again? Then, what about the Underworld Palace? Yiqing Luo asked again. Chi replied, Dizun Master said that after Master's body recovers, we will go to the Underworld Palace together to avenge you. When Yiqing Luo heard that, her brows overflowed with a faint smile. This man, he was truly meticulous. He also knew that she really wanted to take revenge with her own hands. So she specially spared Lang Yen and Xia Ba's lives, waiting for her body to completely recover to its original state. The man and the beast were talking. Yiqing Luo's ears twitched. She heard light footsteps approaching from outside the door. Chapter 30:22. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips and shot a glance at Chi before closing her eyes. Chi blinked its tiger eyes and closed its eyes, nestling in Yiqing Luo's arms. The man and the beast breathed calmly. The footsteps stopped at the door. There was a soft sound of the door opening. Yiqing Luo could hear that the room door was opened by a tiny gap. A few pairs of eyes glanced at her. Based on his intuition, Yiqing Luo expressed that these gazes weren't friendly at all. She sensed it for a bit. He could roughly confirm that there were 5 women standing outside. She's still asleep. A woman lowered her voice and slowly retreated. The door closed again. After confirming that Yiqing Luo had fallen asleep, those few ladies spoke without any reservations. This is the woman Dizun brought back. He doesn't look as stunning as Hall Master Tang described him to be. Even if she isn't a celestial being, Dizun likes her anyway. If Dizun likes her, even if she's ugly, Hall Master Tang will praise her to the skies. I really don't know what the Overlord sees in her. If it wasn't for her, our Imperial Palace wouldn't be in such a passive position. We even dare to step on the newly established Palace of Darkness. I know, right? The women's tone was filled with resentment and disdain towards Yiqing Luo. Only knowing how to rely on our Overlord to flaunt his prowess. Once the Overlord isn't around, he caused himself to almost lose his life. Our Imperial Palace has kept these pills for so many years. Even His Majesty is reluctant to consume them, but all of them went into her mouth as if they cost nothing. The more I think about it, the more I feel indignant. Who does she think she is? You can't even be compared to Miss Feng, but you still have the cheek to cling to the Overlord. After those women confirmed that Yiqing Luo had fallen asleep, they vented out all the accumulated grievances in their hearts without any restraints. Initially, when Yiqing Luo heard those sarcastic remarks, she was still bewildered. How could there be such a terrifying retarded existence in the Imperial Palace? When he heard one of the names, she understood everything. Miss Feng. Someone with the surname Feng in the Imperial Palace, and someone who could be called Miss, other than Feng Ling, she couldn't think of anyone else. Windling grew up in the Imperial Palace. With wind chimes, that idiot. It made sense that there were a few idiots in the Imperial Palace. As it turned out, these people were Wind Chime's followers. Now he had run over here to watch this woman who was personally carried back by Dmo Xian. Did he just want to avenge Wind Chimes? I want to prove it. She was not as good as Feng Ling. Yiqing Luo opened her eyes and a chilly intent filled her eyes. Her weak fingers were just about to lift up. It was easily pressed down by Chi-Chi's tail. In his mind, Chi-Chi's voice resounded. Master, you've just woken up. You can't use your dark force. Chi-Chi will go and teach those baddies who are gossiping outside a lesson. After saying that, Chi-Chi was about to let go of Yiqing Luo and rush out of the door. But suddenly they heard an angry voice. What are you all doing at Qing Luo's entrance? Which hall are you maids from? How dare you be so rude? The few women who were still talking with confidence and composure were immediately frightened to the point of crying out in alarm. Is the quality of the Imperial Palace's maidservants so low? You even dare to talk about your own master? That voice was filled with anger. Chapter 30-23. After the female attendant finished her sentence, she sized up the man in front of her. Following that, she covered her mouth as her gaze moved between the direction of the man and the tightly shut door. Young sect master Gu, you're merely a guest of the Imperial Palace, you have no right to shout and wrangle in front of us. As the female attendant was saying that, her tone turned strange. Speaking of this, young sect master Gu has been running over here for the past few days, don't tell me that. The woman inside is the woman whom the overlord had personally brought back. Gu Jingyu's expression sunk as his gentle brows were filled with anger. Don't you dare spout nonsense. There's nothing between this young master and Qing Luo. If you still know that Qing Luo is the woman whom the overlord had personally brought back, and is your future mistress, then you shouldn't be spouting nonsense behind my back. The overlord had never acknowledged her identity, so she's only the overlord's bed-warming maid. That female attendant's tone was filled with disdain. One person took the lead. The other few female attendants didn't have any fear in them. That's right. What future mistress, that's all in your dreams. We're spouting nonsense. You kept coming over to take a peek at that woman, do you think we don't know? How can this be called as being innocent? The few female attendants totally didn't have any misgivings because of Gu Jingyu's identity. In their hearts, the Imperial Palace was this world's biggest power. What four great sects, what young sect master. They were all fearless. Gu Jingyu was so infuriated by their shameless words that his brows creased tightly as he flew into a rage. You bunch of young lasses who have no respect for your master. Today this young sect master shall help your overlord to teach you how to treat your guests properly. Gu Jingyu's brows sunk as a palm wind landed directly on the female attendant's face. Cough. Just at this moment, suddenly a soft cough was heard from the tightly shut room. Gu Jingyu's palm wind instantly froze in midair. Following that, his figure flashed as he speedily dashed to the front of the room door. He raised his hand and was about to push the door open. But following that, he seemed to have thought of something as his hand awkwardly froze in midair as he slowly retracted it. He clenched his fists and stared at Dollar's door. It was as if there was a whirlpool inside him. After some time, he coughed lightly. Qing Luo, how do you feel? Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as she looked outside the door, at the reflection of the figure as her lips curled up slightly and her voice was slightly hoarse. I'm fine, but your body should be fine, right? In the Miao tribe, Gu Jingyu blocked Xia Ba's attack for her. At that time, he had also suffered very serious injuries. Outside the house, after hearing Yi Qing Luo's concerned words, his lips immediately revealed a gentle smile. I'm fine. Yi Qing Luo could tell that his voice had softened and could almost guess Gu Jingyu's current expression. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond towards Gu Jingyu's feelings. She could sense it somehow. However, she had no way to determine the sincerity behind these feelings. However, no matter how Gu Jingyu felt about her lover would only be Dmo Xian. There was no doubt about this. Towards Gu Jingyu, she could only say her apologies. Qing Luo, can I come in? Not hearing any sound from inside the house, Gu Jingyu immediately opened his mouth to ask worriedly. Yi Qing Luo's eyes drooped as she took a look at herself. She was only wearing a white inner garment. If His Majesty knew how to cherish him, I wouldn't have said such words. He suddenly raised his head and stared at the tightly shut door in front of him. A trace of determination suddenly flashed in his eyes. Qing Luo, even if you blame me, I must bring you out of here today. Leave this place that doesn't belong to you. As he spoke, Gu Jingyu suddenly raised his hand and punched the door. The sound of wood breaking rang out. When Yi Qing Luo heard this voice, her heart instantly panicked. She immediately raised her hand, wanting to cover herself with the bedding. But her weak body's speed naturally couldn't match up to Gu Jingyu's speed. A figure dashed towards her at lightning speed. Swoosh, just as Gu Jinyu's figure was about to appear in the bedroom. Chapter 30-25. Ah! Gu Jingyu let out a blood-curdling scream as he covered his face suddenly. Because of the splinters, there was a vast expanse of white dust in front of him. Gu Jingyu had no time to see clearly everything in front of him. Yi Qing Luo's weak body stiffened slightly. His heart, which had been hanging in suspense, also relaxed. Only, Yi Qing Luo had yet to catch her breath. The next moment, a warm and strong arm hugged her tightly in his embrace. Following that, a red robe wrapped around her slender body tightly. Between her breath, the familiar sandalwood fragrance seeped into her nose. Yi Qing Luo's eyes lit up slightly as her eyes overflowed with joy. Ah Xian! Her hoarse voice called out the man's name delightedly. She slowly raised her eyes. The man in front of her was dressed in a purple robe with peerless elegance. His face, which was as handsome as a god, was reflected in her eyes at close range. Like ink peach blossom eyes, lingering with flowing light. No matter how one looked, it was so cold that it made one sink in and suffocate. Only, when Yi Qing Luo's vision fell into Dmo Xian's eyes, her heart twitched fiercely. Between the man's brows, there was an unconcealable look of exhaustion. Under both sides of the corner of his eyes, there was a light green color. Apparently, these few days when she was unconscious, Dmo Xian hadn't closed his eyes to rest. Ah Xian! Yi Qing Luo opened her mouth softly and called out to him. Her tone was filled with heartache. She struggled to raise her hand, trying to caress the man's exhausted brows. But, her hand, stretched out halfway, and drooped down weakly. Dmo Xian accurately held her hand and pasted it to his face. I'm here. The gentle whisper, like a warm current, flowed past. This scene was heartwarming. Some were warm, some were worried. The 5 maids, on seeing Dmo Xian, were so scared that their faces turned pale and their bodies trembled. Those who were timid directly knelt on the ground with a thud, shivering. Especially when they heard Dmo Xian's extremely gentle voice. The maids grew increasingly fearful. Gu Jingyu, whose face was red from being smashed and had a few cuts on his face, forcefully brushed away the cover on his face and glared ahead. Looking at the sweet scene of Dmo Xian and Yi Qing Luo looking at each other. His eyes were filled with a deep darkness. His fists were clenched tightly as he tried his best to control himself. His heart was filled with love towards Yi Qing Luo as he gritted his teeth and bellowed furiously, "Overlord, even if you're the overlord, you can't force Qing Luo to be with you. Since you're not willing to give Qing Luo the status she deserves, then don't stop Qing Luo from finding her own happiness." His hysteria made Dmo Xian cast a sidelong glance. Dmo Xian's icy cold peach blossom eyes indifferently glanced at Gu Jingyu. His rosy lips curled up into an extremely shallow and cold arc. "I know exactly what happened just now." His voice was flat, wrapped in a chill that made people shiver. Her words caused the 5 maidservants to collapse to the ground, their bodies weak and limp. Crystal clear. Which meant the overlord had heard all their ridicule towards Yi Qing Luo. "Since you're clear, then you should know that Qing Luo will not be happy in the imperial palace." Gu Jingyu clenched his fists tightly. In order to fight for the love of his heart, he plucked up his courage and met Dmo Xian's gaze. "Not happy." Third, Yi Qing Luo's voice paused for a moment as she raised her eyes and took a deep look at Dmo Xian. Her gaze was full of tenderness. No matter who it was, they were able to tell that within that pair of alluring eyes, which had not the slightest bit of concealment, was filled with deep love towards Dmo Xian. Thirdly, to me, I don't care if the world accepts me as Xian's woman or the mistress of the imperial palace. The only thing I care about is Xian's heart. Chapter 30:27. Saying that, Yi Qing Luo's gaze looked towards Gu Jingyu, as her tone was solemn and serious, "So, I'm very sorry, no matter if it's this life or the next life, or the future after that, I love Xian. My lover will only be Xian." Following Yi Qing Luo's serious tone, without a shred of hesitation, Gu Jingyu's face turned pale bit by bit. His tense body seemed to have suddenly lost all his strength. He staggered a few steps back. Then, he sat on the ground in a sorry state. His eyes widened. He couldn't believe that Yi Qing Luo had personally overturned all his understanding. He could tell. Yi Qing Luo's words weren't because of any coercion. It came from the bottom of his heart. His voice came from the bottom of his heart. He could tell. Every time Yi Qing Luo mentioned the 2 words, Xian. The gentleness in her tone and the obvious sweetness. "All of you. Which hall's female attendants are you from?" Dmo Xian's vision slowly fell onto those few female attendants who were kneeling on the ground, trembling non-stop. Dmo Xian's gaze locked onto her. The maids were so frightened that tears flowed from their eyes, and their bodies trembled uncontrollably. The feeling of death came. The maids were so frightened that they wept bitterly. They kowtowed desperately and begged for forgiveness. They knew that Dmo Xian pampered Yi Qing Luo a lot. But he didn't know, Dmo Xian pampered Yi Qing Luo that much. They had never seen such a gentle overlord when he looked at Yi Qing Luo. "It's fine if you don't want to tell me." Dmo Xian's lips curled up slightly, the curvature of his lips made one's scalp numb. He shifted his gaze and said calmly, "Feng." A gust of hurricane came from the dark and stopped in front of Dmo Xian. "Investigate the identities of these people clearly and drag them to the training ground," Dmo Xian instructed. Feng glanced at the 5 pale-faced maids and said, "Yes, this subordinate will definitely give them an unforgettable memory in the training ground." With that, Feng quickly walked toward the 5 maids. Just as he was about to carry them away, behind him, Dmo Xian's faint voice was heard, "Wind." Feng stopped and waited respectfully. "Remember to let all the Emperor Palace's disciples know the reason for their punishment." Following Dmo Xian's words, Feng's hand trembled as he grabbed the maid's hand. He was sure that the look on his face right now was extremely strange. "The overlord is, you want to clear the mistress name. Using such a method to tell everyone in the imperial palace about Yi Qing Luo's identity." Similarly, Gu Jingyu, who was extremely shocked, also thought of this. Gu Jingyu's face was so pale that there was no other color. Earlier they were still criticizing Dmo Xian for not acknowledging Yi Qing Luo's identity, so the entire imperial palace refused to acknowledge Yi Qing Luo as the future mistress of the imperial palace. Now, Dmo Xian was using practical actions to directly slap their faces. Dmo Xian's vision shot towards Gu Jingyu. He moved his 5 fingers and a stream of dark force shot into the air. In just a few breaths, a smoky green figure hurried over. Lord Dizun, why did you summon me in such a hurry? Is there something important? The figure gradually approached. Wasn't that beautiful woman Tang Beiyuan? Personally send young sect master Gu back to South Tide Continent. Dmo Xian's tone was icy cold, but on his face, there was no trace of joy or anger. When Tang Beiyuan heard that, she instantly understood the deep meaning behind Dmo Xian's words. She raised her brows in interest, as she sized Gu Jingyu up from head to toe. This lad actually had his eyes on the woman in the overlord's heart. A vinegar jar like the overlord. Chapter 30-28. He clearly knew that he had taken a fancy to a woman he shouldn't have. You should have taken a detour. This kid actually dared to swagger in front of the overlord. Wasn't that courting death? In addition to that, Tang Beiyuan also noticed Yi Qing Luo, who was nestled in the overlord's arms, wrapped tightly in a red robe. Tang Beiyuan's mind immediately conjured up an exciting drama. Dizun had specially summoned her to send Gu Jingyu back to Wine Valley sect. In other words, he wanted her to send Gu Jingyu back to the Wind Valley sect as a hall master of the imperial palace. This was also clearly telling the Wind Valley sect. The imperial palace was dissatisfied with Gu Jingyu. If the Wind Valley sect didn't want to be enemies with the imperial palace, Gu Jingyu's position as young sect master, he probably couldn't sit still anymore. Even if Gu Jingyu was the destined young master of the Wind Valley sect, in front of the interests of the Wind Valley sect, everything else didn't count for much. Tang Beiyuan sighed inwardly for Gu Jingyu. Immediately clearing his throat, he straightened his back and looked at Dmo Xian seriously. Yes, Overlord. This subordinate will definitely complete the mission. Dmo Xian waved his hand and carried Yi Qing Luo as he turned around and walked out of the courtyard. This house is not clean, I'll bring you to another courtyard. Unclean. Yi Qing Luo thought for a while before she realized the meaning behind Dmo Xian's words. Just now, Gu Jingyu seemed to have entered the bedroom. It was stepped on by Gu Jingyu, so it wasn't clean. This jealousy, it's a little strange. However, complaining was one thing. Yi Qing Luo's heart still felt warm. Dmo Xian carried Yi Qing Luo and walked to the door of the room. Sitting on the ground, Gu Jingyu's face was filled with shock as he clenched his fists tightly. His face was filled with anger and embarrassment as his face flushed red. Qing Luo. His voice rose in pitch. There was a hint of sharpness and ear-piercing in it. Yi Qing Luo looked at Gu Jingyu from Dmo Xian's shoulder. Gu Jingyu's eyes were red and his muscles were tense. Are you telling the truth? You really don't have any feelings for me? As soon as he said that, there was silence all around. Tang Beiyuan placed a hand on her forehead. He had seen people who courted death, but he had never seen someone like this. At this juncture, Gu Jingyu still dared to say such ambiguous words to Qing Luo in front of the overlord. Was this to show his true love, fearless and reckless? In order to move Qing Luo, move himself. The atmosphere was strangely cold. After an unknown amount of time, the young lady who was leaning on Dmo Xian's shoulder had an indifferent expression on her face. Her pair of charming eyes were so calm that there wasn't any luster in them, as she fixed her gaze on Gu Jingyu. Everything I said was from the bottom of my heart. She answered without hesitation, and her tone was unprecedentedly serious and determined. Soon after, she raised her eyes and said word by word, "Before today, I admired your character and was very happy to have a friend like you." "Friend," Gu Jingyu murmured these two words. Suddenly, he seemed to be crying and laughing at the same time. "In other words, after today, you and I are not even friends anymore. Because you have feelings for me." Yiqing Luo replied straightforwardly, "My identity will not allow any opposite sex who has other thoughts towards me to exist. Just because of the overlord." Gu Jingyu's fingers clenched tightly. Chapter 30-29. Yiqing Luo's words were like a death sentence for Gu Jingyu. His whole body slumped down powerlessly, as though he had lost all his energy. But at the next instant, he seemed to have thought of something as he raised his head abruptly with a burning gaze. "I saved you. Saved you once. If you want to repay me, then don't be together with the overlord." Gu Jingyu's words came out of the blue. Yiqing Luo somehow felt that everything was strange. There seemed to be something strange about it. But, thinking deeply, she couldn't tell what was strange about it. Especially the request that Gu Jingyu raised, which made Yiqing Luo feel that something was amiss. "Beiyuan." Dmo Xian was extremely displeased by Gu Jingyu's words as he called out Tang Beiyuan's name coldly. Tang Beiyuan quivered as she had no mood to watch the show as she immediately dragged Gu Jingyu away. Yiqing Luo stared at Gu Jingyu's body, which didn't struggle at all. In Tang Beiyuan's hands, he was like a kite with a broken string, without any energy. Her slender brows creased even tighter. She opened her mouth. "Wait." Tang Beiyuan's footsteps halted. Immediately following that, Yiqing Luo's voice rang, "Yes, it's a fact that you saved me. According to morality, I should return this favor to you." Gu Jingyu's eyes lit up as he looked at Yiqing Luo in delight. "If it's something within my capabilities, I can do it for you." Yiqing Luo's gaze was like a torch as she met Gu Jingyu's gaze calmly, "But, if it concerns Xian, I'm sorry, I can't do it." Her gaze slowly shifted onto Dmo Xian's face. Her eyebrows became gentler and more delicate. Even the corners of her lips revealed a slight smile. "Whatever morality, in front of Xian, it's nothing. For Xian, I can even abandon the common people." She said it word by word as she looked at Dmo Xian seriously. This wasn't just a reply to Gu Jingyu's words. It was her promise to Xian. The warmth between the two eased the stiff atmosphere. Tang Beiyuan didn't give Gu Jingyu any chance to create any more trouble as she carried him and slipped out of the palace. Dmo Xian continued to carry Yiqing Luo as they walked towards the new courtyard. Along the way, they saw many imperial palace's disciples in black training clothes. He could also see maids coming and going. When he saw this scene, everyone's reaction was almost the same. All of them were extremely shocked as they stuck their heads out, wanting to see exactly what that young lady looked like. Everyone in the imperial palace knew. 3 days ago, Di Zun brought back a woman. Rumor had it that she was the woman the overlord doted on. It was obvious that the woman's injuries had mostly recovered on the day she was carried back to the imperial palace. He had fallen into a deep slumber only because he was physically exhausted. However, the overlord had given her all the medicinal pills that he had been saving for years. As long as they were useful to her, he had given them to her for free. It could be seen how infatuated the overlord was with that woman. However, hearsay was hearsay. It was completely different from the shock he felt when he saw it with his own eyes. When Yiqing Luo sensed the gazes from the surroundings, she couldn't help but rub her head against his chest. Her brows revealed a mischievous smile. "So, this is the reason why you want to change to a new courtyard for me." Based on Dmo Xian's ability, he could totally bring him to the new courtyard swiftly. But Dmo Xian intentionally carried her, to be the center of attention along the way. Chapter 30. He was using his actions to show his identity in the imperial palace. Those 5 maids were personally punished by wind at the training ground. Then he intentionally announced the reason for the punishment. And because Gu Jingyu had improper thoughts towards Yiqing Luo, he was personally escorted back to Wine Valley sect by Tang Beiyuan. This was totally not giving Gu Jingyu any chance to make a comeback. Adding on to the fact that he personally carried her all the way to the new residence. All these added up were enough to shut the mouths of those imperial palace's disciples who were still guessing Yiqing Luo's identity. One must know. No matter whether it was Wind or Tang Beiyuan. They were all people who only listened to the overlord's commands. Even the imperial palace's granny had no advantage over Wind or the armament refining hall. The overlord had sent his confidant to do such an unimportant thing. It was enough to show how much importance the overlord placed on Yiqing Luo. Hence, after Yiqing Luo was carried to the new courtyard by Dmo Xian. This news had already spread like wildfire in the imperial palace. From the start to the end, it had not even exceeded the time for a stick of incense to burn. No one dared to discuss it. But in their hearts, they couldn't help but imagine the young lady who could make the overlord head over heels for her. Some of them used their gazes and expressions to communicate silently. Following that, the matter of Wind carrying those 5 maids and throwing them into the training ground was also spread. Immediately, the entire imperial palace was in an uproar. Looked like their imperial palace was really going to welcome their female mistress. The imperial palace's disciples looked at each other in dismay as they discussed in whispers. No one had discovered it. On the training ground, the 2 training team leaders who were standing on both sides exchanged glances. Following that, one of the training team leaders quietly left the training ground. Very quickly, the training team leader went around the main road and took an extremely secluded path. This path was something that even the janitor who cleaned the imperial palace would rarely go. Not to mention the other people in the imperial palace. The training team leader's footsteps were extremely fast. The withered leaves beneath his feet were rustling as he stepped on them. After a while, the training team leader stopped beside a fake mountain. He knocked a few times on the fake mountain. The pace was sometimes fast and sometimes slow. But moments later, the entire fake mountain suddenly shook slightly. Behind the fake mountain, a man in black attire with a murderous look walked out. This man could be seen from his temperament and attire. This was a death warrior. The captain lowered his voice and said, "Go and report that the overlord has brought back a woman." The overlord had sent Protector Feng and Hall leader Tang to support that woman in front of everyone. The news has already spread throughout the imperial palace that this woman will be the future mistress of the imperial palace. The man of death did not say a word and just stared at him quietly. The captain shook his head, indicating that he had no other information. The death warrior turned around and quickly disappeared behind the rockery. When Dmo Xian carried Yiqing Luo into the new courtyard, Yiqing Luo's pupils couldn't help but widen. She straightened her back in shock as her charming eyes stared blankly at Dmo Xian. This is you. When Dmo Xian lowered his eyes to look at her, the expression on his face was extremely gentle. "Ever since I returned from the 21st century, I've been preparing this courtyard." His voice was low and husky like a feather, brushing against her eardrums and heart. "Do you like it?" Chapter 30-31. How could she not like it? From the moment they stepped into the courtyard. From the beginning to the end, it was built in the style of the 21st century. What came into view was a large green lawn. It was surrounded by beautiful purple and red flowers. Pure white walls and carved iron fences. On the left side of the flower bed and the resting pavilion wrapped in vines, there were 2 swings. If she remembered correctly, The style of this lawn was roughly similar to the Century Park in the 21st century. Dmo Xian carried her and walked further in. After the lawn, there was a small training ground. Further in, it was a very modern room. Walking into the main room, there was a huge living room. The floor was covered with a very soft carpet. Yiqing Luo could tell at a glance. This carpet was made with at least hundreds of precious feathers, with the most exquisite craftsmanship. If an ordinary person were to obtain such a blanket that could wrap themselves up in it, they would want to hang it on their body every day. But here, it had become a carpet. Furthermore, almost every room was filled to the brim with blankets. The guest room in the backyard was at least a few hundred square meters. Every corner was covered with such precious blankets. How many precious feathers did it take? The interior decoration was also completely in line with the modern style. Tables, chairs, and the surrounding furnishings were all built up. There was even a sofa. Especially when Yiqing Luo raised her head, she saw a few dazzling chandeliers hanging above the eaves. On that chandeliers, there were thin and small luminous pearls, flickering. Yiqing Luo was completely stunned. How did you make so many things? Yiqing Luo's eyes widened, filled with disbelief. One must know, these things. In the 21st century, they could be seen everywhere. But in the Nirvana realm, it was impossible to have them. Whether it was this smooth and transparent table, or the soft and comfortable sofa, or that dazzling chandeliers. None of these were things that could possibly exist in this era. Yiqing Luo could be sure. These were absolutely not brought back from the 21st century by Dmo Xian, who had the ability to travel through time and space. These things, at first glance, were indeed extremely similar to those things in the 21st century. But if one looked closely, he could still tell the difference. Everything that was filled with the style of the 21st century was made little by little using the things from the Nirvana realm. Yiqing Luo's heart was beating wildly, as though it was about to gush out from her throat. She struggled a little, wanting to touch these familiar things. Dmo Xian hugged her tightly. This place belongs to you. Put on your shoes and you can take your time to look around. He carried her into the bedroom. Just as he pushed open the door, Yiqing Luo was shocked by this scene. The whole room was filled with pink hues. Pink walls, pink curtains, pink soft bed. Yiqing Luo raised her head and stared at Dmo Xian suspiciously. Could it be that her man had other hobbies? What's with this pink screen? You don't like it? The smile on Dmo Xian's face froze as his peach blossom eyes revealed panic and helplessness. I thought you would like. Chapter 30-32. Dmo Xian didn't reply. He held her hands together, his large palms were warm. I remember, in that plane, the place where you grew up. When you told me about your past, the glow in your eyes. His voice was very gentle. Mellow, like a fine wine. Bit by bit, it intoxicated Yiqing Luo. I know, you like that place where you grew up very much. But, you are my woman, in the future, you will always be with me, living in this world. Dmo Xian's hand slowly moved upwards. His slender fingers, with thin calluses, caressed the skin on Yiqing Luo's face. This is a place of remembrance for you. If you want to go to that plane, you can stay here. His gaze slowly swept across the surroundings, that pink-colored environment. Do you still remember, in that plane, when you told me about your past, what you said to me? The hair on her forehead was brushed aside by the man's gentle fingers. Yiqing Luo's slightly red eyes trembled. She looked at Dmo Xian's peach blossom eyes, which contained a pool of spring water. The rippling light in his eyes, as though it wanted to swallow her up. so that she couldn't escape. You tried one, this color dress. Dmo Xian looked at Yiqing Luo's bewildered eyes, staring at him in a daze, with a face of infatuation. He couldn't help but laugh. He raised his hand, lightly tapped on Yiqing Luo's forehead. That gaze was filled with love and helplessness. Simply too sweet. After Dmo Xian's reminder, Yiqing Luo, who was immersed in beauty, suddenly remembered. Back in the 21st century, she indeed pulled Dmo Xian to go shopping. And specially tried on an extremely Lolita pink princess dress. At that time, she indeed said this to Dmo Xian. Ah, Xian. Actually, when I was very young, I wanted to be like ordinary girls, to paint the entire room pink. Curtains, tables, chairs, sofa, everything, I want to make everything pink. But because of my identity, my world, other than black, there is only white, I don't have the qualifications to like any color. Yiqing Luo pulled back her senses from her memories, and saw Dmo Xian's extremely anxious face. As though as long as she said she didn't like it, he immediately tore down this bedroom and rebuilt it. This man, she was moved and amused at the same time. Because of her words, Dmo Xian really remodeled a room with a pink screen for her. He was putting in so much effort to make her happy, to make her satisfied. What reason did she have to refuse him? In front of Yiqing Luo's eyes, it was as if fireworks had bloomed. There was a warm current in her heart, filling it up bit by bit. Ever since she woke up, she had always felt that it was empty. Yiqing Luo's arms wrapped around Dmo Xian's neck, and without any hesitation, she planted her lips on Dmo Xian's lips. I like Ah Xian's surprises, and even more. Ah Xian. The moment the girl's soft lips pressed against his, Dmo Xian's pupils contracted. He abruptly tightened his arms and deepened the kiss. Their auras intertwined. Until Dmo Xian noticed that Yiqing Luo's body was not used to such intense intimacy. After fiercely pecking Yiqing Luo's lips a few times, Dmo Xian released her. Yiqing Luo seemed as though she had lost all her energy as she laid limply in his arms. Chapter 30-33. 3,000 strands of hair, poured down. The young lady's eyes were like silk, her cheeks flushed red. Because of the kiss, her eyes were half opened, adding a few hints of enchantment and laziness. Dmo Xian's eyes drooped, as his breathing suddenly tightened. His body also turned stiff. How would Yiqing Luo not understand what Dmo Xian's reaction represented? Her cheeks turned even redder. Earlier, when Gu Jingyu was about to barge into the room, she retrieved a stamina-replenishing pill from the profound phoenix ring and swallowed it in a timely manner. After nestling in Dmo Xian's arms for so long, finally, she had recovered quite a bit of energy. And because of Dmo Xian's kiss, she was once again weak and powerless. And under this situation, she actually still wanted to continue. Yiqing Luo face-bombed. Her man was really poisonous, teaching a pure young lady like her bad. This is your home. Dmo Xian tightened his arms again, as the young lady's petite body stuck close to him. Although the strength was strong, but it was controlled very well. It totally didn't cause any uncomfortable feeling to Yiqing Luo. His voice was still that gentle, just a little husky, with some kind of suppressed emotions. He panted heavily as he changed the topic, trying his best to pacify his restlessness, no matter if it's the imperial palace or the upper realm. I will let them know, the only woman beside me is only you. Only, Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo raised her head, her eyes reflected Dmo Xian's face as she revealed a smile. I will also work hard to catch up to your footsteps, and then let everyone know that my, Yiqing Luo's man, my husband, is you. Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian's eyes lit up slightly. His brows overflowed with a smile. Yiqing Luo's smile became thicker. Her curved eyes were tainted with a trace of craftiness. At this tender moment, Yiqing Luo suddenly moved her arm. The hands which were around Dmo Xian's neck moved to his shoulders. Following that, her waist borrowed strength and exerted force. The man's strong and tall body fell backwards. The soft big bed firmly received the man's body. Bright red flower petals were scattered on the pink bedding, giving off a refreshing fragrance. Dmo Xian's black hair scattered in between the petals, his purple robe also swept up a few ripples. Under the bright red petals, it made the man look even more magnificent and peerless, comparable to a god. Yiqing Luo's petite body covered his chest. She raised herself up and looked down at him. Her slender fingers caressed his face bit by bit. Between his eyebrows, there was a wide smile. The girl bent down, her fine black hair falling on the man's body. Her lips curved into a charming smile and her fingers moved to his thin lips. I like Xian's surprises very much. So, no matter what, I should return the favor. Her voice carried a unique charm and coquettishness. A pair of charming eyes gleamed with a charming and spirited light. Every smile, every frown, every movement was filled with charm. Dmo Xian's pupils contracted fiercely and there seemed to be some kind of emotion in his eyes, as it kept on surging. Just like a beast that was about to break out of its cage. Dmo Xian's change, Yiqing Luo naturally saw it. Her lips curled upwards, her smile became more and more charming, her body also followed closely, slightly lowering a little. Chapter 30-34. Lil Luo, He had to admit that the young lady's action made his eyes light up quickly. Dmo Xian called out Yiqing Luo's name hoarsely as his breathing became heavier. Yiqing Luo, who got the response, her eyes curved even more seductively. She was like a blossoming rose, emitting a fatal charm. Her hand slowly moved from Dmo Xian's lips to his chest. My return gift is. Yiqing Luo's hand, bit by bit, pulled open Dmo Xian's robe, revealing the man's underwear, as well as that large expanse of white and radiant chest. Her hand gently touched his chest. Dmo Xian's eyes instantly darkened and what followed was a surge of turbulent sparks. His body moved slightly. His thick palm was about to grab Yiqing Luo's wrist to stop her following actions. But, at the next moment, Yiqing Luo's palm pressed on the area of his heart. The young lady's soft touch made Dmo Xian's body stiffen instantly, as his gaze unknowingly trembled. But the young lady had no intention to continue. She curved her long and narrow eyes, those resplendent eyes were like stars embellished. Just like that, smiling, her palm pressed on his heart, not moving away. A burst of profound energy from the young lady's palm was transmitted into Dmo Xian's body. Dmo Xian's red eyes retracted a little. Didn't Chi tell you, I'm already fine? He didn't stop Yiqing Luo's action, you've just woken up, don't waste your profound energy. It did. Yiqing Luo's smile was no longer the flirtatious charm which she intentionally teased Dmo Xian, but a rare seriousness. But, I need to confirm it personally, before I can be assured. Before the goo worm, when Dmo Xian was in the upper realm, because he withdrew his clone to protect her, he suffered an internal injury. Later on, under the corrosion of the goo worm, switching back and forth the goo worm's mode, caused a huge damage to his body. Even though Chi confidently told her that Dmo Xian's body had recovered fully, and had advanced, she still wanted to confirm it personally. Warm profound energy slowly spread through Dmo Xian's limbs and bones. After a full cycle, Yiqing Luo then removed her palm and propped herself up. You're smart, you didn't lie to me. Dmo Xian's body indeed didn't have any abnormalities. His heart, which had been hanging in the air, was finally at ease. Her hand had just moved away from his chest. The man, who had been lying on the bed obediently, suddenly moved his hand and grabbed her wrist. Is this your gift? Yiqing Luo's expression froze. Her cheeks were tinged with a trace of redness. The large palm on his wrist was like a ball of raging fire. She could clearly feel the heat from the man's body. Yiqing Luo's pink lips, which had been kissed till swollen, pursed her lips slightly as she lowered her eyes and whispered, personally examining your injury, isn't that a return gift? You want to stop halfway through your flirting? The man's low and husky voice revealed endless magnetism and evilness. Even if I agree, do you think this place will agree? His pointed words made Yiqing Luo's face turn even redder. Alright, facing Dmo Xian. She had the courage to flirt with him. But she didn't have the courage to be flirted with. After all, her flirting with him and him flirting with her were totally not on the same level. The minute Dmo Xian flirted with her, she would throw away her helmet and armor in minutes, surrendering and admitting defeat. Chapter 30-35. Yiqing Luo had just finished her words. Her waist was lifted up by a force. Immediately following that, she fell onto the soft big bed. The man's warm body pressed tightly against her. She and Dmo Xian exchanged positions. A very orthodox position. Male on. Female on. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled violently, her little hands curled up slightly as she clutched Dmo Xian's collar tightly. When she opened her eyes, she met the man's handsome face. Especially that pair of long and narrow peach blossom eyes, which were like stars embellished with flowing lights and vibrant colors, were absorbing her soul bit by bit. Yiqing Luo's heart suddenly accelerated. The man bowed his head, raised his eyebrows and smiled lightly, his thin lips pressed on the skin of her face, slowly moving downwards. Finally, it stopped at her lips. A warm and elegant breath wrapped around Yiqing Luo, causing Yiqing Luo's delicate body to tremble from time to time. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but close her eyes. Delicate moans, the breath also became warm. The man's thin lips pressed down. A very gentle, very loving touch. The elegant sandalwood smell lingered between the two. Yiqing Luo's state of mind, gradually, was confused. But, just when Yiqing Luo thought Dmo Xian was going to continue the next step, Dmo Xian slowly propped up his body, lying sideways next to her. Yiqing Luo closed her eyes, waited for a long time, and sensed that something was wrong. The moment she opened her eyes, she saw Dmo Xian by the side, smiling at her elegantly. In his eyes, there was an obvious teasing smile. Yiqing Luo's face, instantly, turned red. You did it on purpose. This man, actually, after teasing her, he just stood by and watched. Was he deliberately trying to see her embarrassed? Dmo Xian laughed lightly. In the laughter, there was endless husky magnetism. His hand, stretched over, embraced Yiqing Luo's delicate body. Yiqing Luo struggled, puffed up her cheeks and said angrily, "You are rejecting my gift. If you don't want it, I won't give it to you." Dmo Xian laughed even more joyfully. His long arms tightly encircled her, covering the young girl's petite body, completely in his chest. The man's slender fingers gently slid over the young girl's back. Her movements were extremely gentle. Why would I reject this reciprocal gift? Dmo Xian leaned close to her ear as he chuckled, "Don't tell me you still can't feel it." As he spoke, he moved a little. How could Yiqing Luo not feel it? Her face was getting redder. She lowered her head, bit her pink lips, and squeezed her head against the man's chest. Dmo Xian sighed softly and tightened his arms even more. Don't move. If you move again, I might really not have the willpower to take care of your body. A certain softness in Yiqing Luo's heart seemed to have been poked. The resentment in her eyes instantly became as gentle as water. This man, no matter how unbearable it was for him to endure it. He was also thinking about her body. He woke up after sleeping for 3 days and 3 nights. Even if he had the essence chi pill to replenish his energy, he was afraid that he would not be able to withstand Dmo Xian's demand. She was very clear about this. She just felt uncomfortable looking at Dmo Xian. But she couldn't bear to do it. So there was that scene of her handing herself over. Yiqing Luo's pink lips rose, smiling contentedly as she hugged Dmo Xian's waist with both hands. "Ah, Xian, you're so good." Dmo Xian smiled bitterly. This compliment, I really don't want it. God knows if he could continue to restrain himself. The little woman in his arms didn't understand how attractive she was to him at all. Chapter 30-36. This smile was so enchanting that it could cause the downfall of a nation. But this enchanting smile made Dmo Xian's brows twitch as an ominous premonition arose in his heart. As expected. The next moment, Yiqing Luo's alluring face was already close to him. She opened her mouth and bit his neck with her pink and moist lips. She didn't use much strength. And her little tongue touched from time to time. Dmo Xian's eyes darkened as his fingers clasped the young lady's slender waist tightly. "Lil Luo, don't play with fire." Yiqing Luo giggled. Her smile was devilish and charming. Her petite body in his arms arched here and there, endlessly seeking death. Yiqing Luo stuck close to Dmo Xian. Naturally she could clearly feel his body's reaction. "Lil Luo. Air." Dmo Xian gritted his teeth. Be careful of self-immolation. That suppressed word seemed to be squeezed out from the gaps of his teeth. I'm not playing with fire, I'm just weak and have no energy, no matter how I lie down I can't sit still." Yiqing Luo deliberately used a coquettish tone as she acted coquettishly, rubbing her little face into Dmo Xian's arms. This rubbing decisively made Dmo Xian's body stiffen even more. Even though it was separated by a robe, Yiqing Luo could feel the man's body heat gradually rising. Seeing Dmo Xian's expression had turned extremely ugly and his eyes were filled with fiery red light. Yiqing Luo withdrew her hand contentedly and snorted, "Let you see me embarrassed, this is giving you a taste of your own medicine." Saying that, Yiqing Luo pushed Dmo Xian's chest away and was about to get up from the bed. The moment she sat up straight, her wrist was suddenly pulled by the man's strength. She fell into the man's arms once again. What greeted her was an overwhelming masculine aura. The overbearing kiss made Yiqing Luo stunned. Until Dmo Xian's wide palm probed her skin. The slightly cold fingertips made Yiqing Luo quiver. Her eyes were misty as she stared at Dmo Xian, making the last struggle. Xian, my body has no energy, no energy." She hadn't finished her words. The man pulled her hand down. Yiqing Luo's hand trembled, but she wasn't able to fight against his strength. The man's husky and magnetic voice carried a bewitching charm as he whispered into her ear, "Lil Luo, there are many other ways that don't consume energy. Extinguish the fire." He deliberately lowered his voice when he said the last 2 words. It was very seductive. Yiqing Luo instantly wanted to cry but had no tears as her heart was filled with vexation. As expected, she had no chance of winning in flirting with Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian flirted with her at any moment. Yiqing Luo vs Dmo Xian, the nth round. Once again, Yiqing Luo fell into a deep sleep in this pink bedroom, which ended. When Yiqing Luo woke up again, it was already noon the next day. She opened her eyes. Dmo Xian was already dressed neatly as he sat by the side, handling the important affairs of the imperial palace. He was well-dressed and had an outstanding temperament. He was completely different from the beast from yesterday. Yiqing Luo moved and was just about to lift the quilt on her. However, her hands were so sore that she sucked in a breath of cold air. Especially her 10 fingers, as though they had been cut off and reassembled. Thinking of yesterday, Dmo Xian said to extinguish the fire without consuming energy. Yiqing Luo was so embarrassed that she couldn't wait to bury herself into the pillow. She swore that she would never flirt with Dmo Xian, that beast, ever again. Yiqing Luo's voice attracted the man's attention. Chapter 30-37. Yiqing Luo turned around with all her might, not willing to bother about him. Dmo Xian bent down and placed one hand on her body through the blanket as he spoke gently. "All right, since you're awake, get up and eat something. Although there are elemental pills to replenish your energy, but you still need to eat." Yiqing Luo twisted her sore hand as she pursed her lips tightly and even harumphed loudly to express her anger. The young lady's rare demeanor made the smile on Dmo Xian's face even more obvious. Only he was able to see such an agile little Luo. Dmo Xian's eyes were filled with adoration as he scooped her together with the pink blanket into his arms. "Even if you're angry, you still need to eat something first to fill your stomach before you have the energy to be angry with me, isn't that so?" This tone seemed as though he was coaxing a little pet, making Yiqing Luo's lips twitched. What did he mean by eating until she had the energy to be angry with him? At this moment, according to the usual routine, shouldn't he be hugging her and expressing his mistake warmly and apologetically, promising that he would absolutely not use this kind of method to torment her in the future? This man, why didn't he play his cards according to the routine? As though he could see through Yiqing Luo's thoughts. Dmo Xian's chin, separated by the blanket, pillowed beside her ear as he laughed softly. "I don't want to lie to you, because last night was great. In the future, there will be more other ways to extinguish the fire, so I'm unable to give you this guarantee." Yiqing Luo. Towards Dmo Xian's words, she really didn't know if she should express gratitude or anger. In the end, Yiqing Luo was half coaxed and half carried by Dmo Xian as she drank a bowl of porridge which was made from precious herbs. After Yiqing Luo had her fill, coupled with Dmo Xian's intentional flattery and gentle words, the anger in Yiqing Luo's heart had more or less subsided. Dmo Xian knew Yiqing Luo's character, so he changed the topic. "During this period of time, stay in the imperial palace to rest and follow me to settle the matter between secluded palace and hell palace. As for the west continent, you don't need to worry. Yan Xiaoyi, Qiao Jin, and the others have already brought the Miao tribe's holy maiden to the west continent. With the Miao tribe's holy maiden around, Long Yunzhan's poison will not be a problem." Mentioning this matter, how could Yiqing Luo still care about what had happened yesterday? Throwing a tantrum. She immediately sat up straight and turned her head. "Yi went to the west continent. What about the Miao people? The battle with the two from the Netherworld Palace. The entire Miao tribe was basically destroyed. When Dmo Xian appeared, he spared the lives of the Miao tribesmen on account of Miao Yi's help. However, the two from the Underworld Palace and the disciples from the Palace of Gloom had killed many of the Miao clansmen. At this time, Miao Yi was still heading towards the west continent. Wouldn't that deepen the prejudice the Miao people had against Miao Yi? The survivors of the Miao tribe, including the injured tribesmen, number about 1,200 people. Dmo Xian rubbed her head. These 1,200 people, if after this huge battle, know how to unite and survive, it's not impossible to rebuild the Miao tribe. As for the Miao tribe's holy maiden, the imperial palace has sent out 2,000 disciples to stay in the Miao tribe, to accompany the Miao clansmen to rebuild the Miao tribe. The condition is in exchange for the Miao tribe's holy maiden, to work for the imperial palace for 1 month. The Miao clansmen will not agree to it. Yi Qing Luo, indeed, it was impossible not to agree to it. Chapter 30-38. After all, the imperial palace's disciples were stationed in the Miao tribe. This not only represented that the Miao tribe had been rebuilt with an additional 2,000 men's strength, but it represented that the imperial palace had become the Miao tribe's backing. With the imperial palace's protection, the Miao tribe's future development would be much smoother. Moreover, the Miao tribe's holy maiden and the overlord's pampered daughter were brothers. Handing the Miao tribe's holy maiden over to the imperial palace, there wouldn't be any accidents. The Miao tribesmen naturally wouldn't be too worried about the Miao tribe's holy maiden. Miao Yi had sold herself to the imperial palace for a month for the Miao tribe's future. The Miao tribesmen were extremely grateful, so how could they possibly blame Miao Yi for leaving the Miao tribe at this critical juncture? When Yi Qing Luo heard that, her little body pounced into Dmo Xian's arms as her arms wrapped around his neck and gave him a smack on the cheek. This man was always able to guess all of her worries, and he had arranged everything appropriately. Such a powerful man. To sweep away all the obstacles for herself. If she didn't work hard to raise her profound grade, to chase up to Dmo Xian's footsteps and work hard to walk side by side with him, wouldn't that be letting down Dmo Xian's efforts? Instantly, Yi Qing Luo's fighting spirit soared as her little fists clenched tightly. I've decided, after the Nether Palace's matters are settled, we'll go to the East and South continents to get the sacred beast bead and head to the upper realm. Dmo Xian pinched her nose as he gave a low laugh. I thought you had already decided. You asked Qinhua Sect's sovereign to automatically send the black tortoise sacred beast bead to me, isn't it to let me make up my mind? Yi Qing Luo shook her little head as the man's finger fell from her nose. That's not it, it's just the right timing. Dmo Xian scooped her petite body into his arms. I understand you, you're not someone who is content with the current situation. Yi Qing Luo didn't struggle any further as she leaned into Dmo Xian's arms, placing her chin on his chest as she raised her head. This battle with the Palace of Darkness, this battle with the Hell Sect, I deeply understood the disparity between myself and them. If it wasn't for my God relic and profound jade heart, I would absolutely not be Nether Palace and Hell Palace's opponent. Indeed, I am not someone who is content with the status quo. I want to protect you. I want to protect my friends, just like you want to protect me. I can't hurt myself every time to make myself stronger. So, I want to make myself stronger. Her tone was sonorous and forceful, and it carried a sense of determination. A pair of charming eyes emitted a scorching luster. 4 pairs of eyes met and Dmo Xian's eyes revealed a faint smile. That smile was peerless. His slender fingers were slightly cold as he gently stroked her forehead. He smiled, his tone helpless, but it was full of pampering. So, I have already sent someone to bring a letter to Xiao Yu, asking him to find the sacred beast pearl guarded by the Three Springs sect. Was this man a roundworm in her stomach? As for other matters, don't think too much about them. After you recover, I'll accompany you to the East and South continents. Dmo Xian pinched her cheeks. Don't think of sneaking in alone, otherwise. If I catch you back and punish you, you know it. Yi Qing Luo, she inexplicably recalled the scene last night. Her face sunk, expressing that she didn't want to understand. Chapter 30-39. Regarding the secluded palace's matter, the imperial palace's disciples and Peach Blossom 3000 have already joined forces to investigate. Dmo Xian could tell what Yi Qing Luo was thinking as he bent down and kissed her lips. I know you can't sit still. These few days, I'll bring you to the underworld palace to have some fun. By the time we return, the secluded palace's investigation should have reached the imperial palace, then we'll consider other matters. Yi Qing Luo's eyes lit up. Underworld palace. But play is play, you have to listen to me. Dmo Xian poked Yi Qing Luo's forehead as he looked at her sparkling eyes, his lips unknowingly curled upwards. No problem. Yiqing Luo nodded her head vigorously. As long as she wasn't locked on the bed, taking various pills to nourish her body, nothing was a problem. Especially when she followed Dmo Xian to the underworld palace to have some fun. But Yiqing Luo's excitement and agitation vanished the next day when she followed Dmo Xian to the underworld palace. Because she was trapped in the carriage. And it was escorted by Little Nine, the noble sacred beast nine-tailed fox. Not only Little Nine. There were also 4 fairy-like female attendants standing around the carriage. As for her, her range of movement was limited to this carriage. Yiqing Luo. She had no way to resist. She wanted to have some fun at the underworld palace. She could only listen to him obediently. Sit in the carriage obediently. Yiqing Luo put on a sour face as she watched a certain overlord casually throw Xia Ba and Leng Yan, who were badly mutilated, without a single piece of intact skin. Leng Yan was in so much pain that he sucked in a breath of cold air. His mouth, which had its tongue cut off, kept making sounds. Xia Ba laid on the ground as he weakly howled, "Kill us! Kill us!" The ground was quickly dyed red by their blood. These 2 people's treatment in the imperial palace was really tragic. At this moment, 2 young men dressed in black, around 17 to 18 years old, walked over. You, bring them up. Dmo Xian instructed the 2 youngsters as he lifted the curtains of the carriage and stepped into it. The 2 youngsters carried Xia Ba and Leng Yan agilely as they walked straight ahead. His speed was extremely fast, and he disappeared in the blink of an eye. Yiqing Luo's charming eyes stared intently at Dmo Xian as he walked towards her and sat beside her. He even stretched out his hand and hugged her into his embrace. The corners of his eyes twitched uncontrollably. "You intend to let me sit in this carriage for the entire day?" Yiqing Luo elbowed his abdomen. Dmo Xian's large palm wrapped around her wrist. Lowering his head, his thin lips pressed against her fair neck. "I'm taking you to the underworld palace to settle the score. So..." Yiqing Luo's delicate body trembled as she shrank back to avoid the man's mischief. "Although I'm a venerable sovereign, I'm taking you with me. I can't ignore the chief god's law." Dmo Xian didn't stop Yiqing Luo from avoiding him as he tightly rested his chin on her shoulder and spoke in a low and hoarse voice, "Bringing you to the earth realm to find trouble with the underworld palace. There must be a dignified reason." Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes. She immediately understood the meaning behind Dmo Xian's words. Every interface had its own rules. For example, the lower realm did not allow people from the upper realm to appear. The upper realm did not allow people from the lower realm who did not have the qualifications to go to the upper realm to appear. Like Yiqing Luo, if she was brought to the earth realm by Dmo Xian, it would be fine if she wasn't discovered. Once she was discovered, the balance historian had the right to detain her. Chapter 30-40. They were looking for trouble with the Hell Palace. Naturally, it would attract the attention of the people from the upper planes. Yiqing Luo's existence would naturally attract the attention of the people from the upper planes. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Dmo Xian had to have a reasonable reason. A reason which could convince everyone to accept Yiqing Luo, a person from the lower realm, appearing in the upper realm. In fact, to take action against the Hell Palace. Dmo Xian could directly take action. But Dmo Xian had taken into consideration Yiqing Luo's thoughts, so he thought of a way to bring her along to settle the scores personally. After all, when Yiqing Luo had the right to ascend to the upper realm, then she would settle the scores with the people from the Hell Palace. This heat had long passed. The underworld palace would also be able to completely disregard this matter. Yiqing Luo had been sleeping in Dmo Xian's arms. But moments later, Dmo Xian called out her name. She opened her eyes and the surroundings were pitch black space. She could faintly see a few wisps of strange aura floating in the air. That pitch black, meandering and spiraling, extended far into the distance, totally unable to see the boundary. Yiqing Luo merely used her senses to scan and understood. That was Xia Ba and Len Yan's evil qi. In other words, they had already reached the Hell Palace. Yiqing Luo was slightly shocked. Was it so easy to come to the upper realm? She didn't feel any discomfort at all. Sit here properly, leave the rest to me. Dmo Xian's gentle kiss landed on her forehead. When Yiqing Luo raised her eyes, she only saw the back view of the man walking out of the carriage. His purple robe billowed, like the rolling clouds in the black space. Silky black hair, scattered behind him. That posture, noble and elegant, like a god of the world, unattainable. The man walked out of the carriage in big strides. Ah Lei and Ah Yu, the two guards, were already carrying the two half-dead men, standing there waiting for orders. Dmo Xian's expression no longer had any tenderness and sweetness. It was a treacherous icy cold intent. He stood in between the guards and stopped in his tracks. Following that, his wide sleeves waved slightly. In an instant, an incomparably tyrannical energy surged forward in a direction that seemed to have no end in sight. Bam! That energy seemed to have hit the air. Endless dark force exploded in this pitch-black space. Powerful dark force enveloped the entire space. However, sitting in the carriage, Yiqing Luo didn't have any other feelings. She furrowed her brows. No matter how much Dmo Xian cared about her existence and restrained his power, it was impossible for her not to sense any energy. Unless, Yiqing Luo's gaze immediately fell onto those 4 female attendants who were brimming with immortal qi. Sure enough, there was a layer of faint purple light in their palms. Barrier. Dmo Xian conjured a barrier to protect the carriage. No matter how intense the battle in the outside world was, she, who was protected by the barrier, would not be affected in the slightest. Just as Yiqing Luo was in a dilemma about the enchantment. Suddenly, a rough voice rang out in this quiet, pitch-black space. What kind of dog is this? Do you know what this place is? Soon after, a hole seemed to be torn open in the pitch-black space. A huge door appeared out of thin air. A middle-aged man walked out from the door. He was dirty and unkempt. That middle-aged man rubbed his nose as he walked forward with a fiendish look. When his gaze met Dmo Xian. Chapter 3041. Lord, Overlord. The middle-aged man's face, which was so dirty that its color could not be seen, had now turned ghastly pale. His violent aura was also restrained. I didn't know that Overlord had arrived. Sorry for not coming out to meet you. Sorry for not coming out to meet you. No matter how arrogant the underworld palace was, no matter how disregarding the secular world. But towards the rumors of Dmo Xian, they had heard of it. There were also many brothers who died in Dmo Xian's hands. It could be said that the underworld palace could defy the heavens, defy the earth and defy the air. But they did not dare to defy Dmo Xian. Even if Dmo Xian just stood there, without saying a word, the imposing aura from his body was enough to suppress that middle-aged man, making breathing extremely difficult. This lord is here to send 2 people to the underworld palace. Dmo Xian's deep and cold voice was emotionless, without any trace of emotion. The middle-aged man only felt his heart tightening, as he raised his head apprehensively, looking at Dmo Xian. Who are they? To trouble Overlord to send them personally. Bam! The middle-aged man's voice just fell. 2 lumps of flesh and blood were thrown at his feet. Those 2 lumps were covered in blood. When they were thrown on the ground, they hit the middle-aged man's feet, staining with a large patch of blood. The middle-aged man suppressed the urge to stretch out his feet, to kick these 2 lumps out, as he asked in confusion, This is. Save me. At his feet, the person who was nearer suddenly grabbed the middle-aged man's hand, as he spoke weakly. The middle-aged man's face sunk. With his originally irritable temperament, how could he tolerate someone grabbing his feet? Previously, when he saw these 2 lumps of bloody things, it was because these 2 lumps were brought by Dmo Xian. Now, it was completely a body's conditioned reflex. The middle-aged man immediately kicked the person who was grabbing his feet and sent him flying. Ah! The bloody thing screamed as its body flew out. That bloody lump rolled several rounds on the ground. Finally, it lay face up on the ground. Under the messy hair, revealed that barely recognizable face. The middle-aged man's eyes widened as he swiftly rushed over, Lord Hell. But when the middle-aged man was about to rush in front of Xia Ba, an invisible force blocked the middle-aged man's path. The middle-aged man's pupils constricted. Seeing Xia Ba in such a state, he was so angry that his whole body stiffened. He looked in the direction of the power. Clenching his fists tightly, he suppressed the fear in his heart and gritted his teeth. What is the meaning of this, Lord Dizun? Which is to say, you admit that these 2 people are from your hell palace. Dmo Xian's eyes were indifferent as his chilly gaze swept past him. The powerful pressure caused the middle-aged man's heart to be filled with fear. He turned his head with an ugly expression and looked at the other person who was badly mutilated. Upon closer inspection, it wasn't difficult to tell that it was Leng Yan. Leng Yan was the most destructive person in the underworld palace. When the middle-aged man saw that Leng Yan was lying motionless on the ground like a dog, the middle-aged man's face darkened. He stared furiously at Dmo Xian. I wonder how did these 2 from the underworld palace offend the overlord? Lord Dizun is so ruthless. This lord had personally sent them back, is to have a good talk with the underworld palace, on how your underworld palace had offended this lord. Dmo Xian didn't have the slightest intention of being courteous, as his thin lips curled into a sneer. These words made the middle-aged man's face turn pale, but when he saw the 2 people lying on the ground, badly mutilated. Chapter 30-42. Everyone could see that Xia Ba and Leng Yan were completely crippled. Now they were still hanging by a breath. That must be because Dmo Xian used some special method or elixir, living a life worse than death. That was the heaviest punishment. Overlord, this is the Lord of Hell of our Hell Palace. How dare you injure the Lord of Hell of my underworld palace to such a state? The middle-aged man shouted angrily, Does Overlord want to declare war on the Hell Palace? Dmo Xian raised his eyebrows. But the corner of his eyes fell on the middle-aged man. That made the middle-aged man's back shiver. His fierce words and stern expression immediately disappeared. Dmo Xian's thin lips curled up slightly. He looked evil but revealed a bone-piercing chill. Lord of Hell Palace. The middle-aged man was aghast and shrunk his neck in fear. Since he's the Lord of the Hell Palace, then his actions represent the entire Hell Palace, right? Dmo Xian seemed as though he didn't see his fear as he asked indifferently with an icy smile. His tone was very calm. And there was no ripple in it. But when Dmo Xian spat out the last 2 words, the middle-aged man only felt that the air around him seemed to solidify. The endless coldness was accompanied by a surging murderous aura. He couldn't breathe at all under the pressure. The middle-aged man was forced to take a few steps back. His body kept trembling at a speed visible to the naked eye. What did Lord Hell Palace do? To annoy Overlord, he injured this sovereign's woman. as DMO Xian's cold voice sounded. Then, in the air, there suddenly surged a strong dark force. Like a stormy sea, it rushed down. The middle-aged man didn't even have a chance to react. Bang! A mouthful of blood was spat out from his mouth. His whole body suddenly flew backward. His body smashed heavily on the door, which looked like it was torn apart. Immediately, he fell heavily on the ground. Boom, boom, boom. Another deafening roar rang out. The ground collapsed. Especially where the middle-aged man fell, there was a deep mark. Old lie. All of a sudden, a few furious voices rang out from the Hell sect. Soon after, a few men who were about the same age as the middle-aged man and were also slovenly and unkempt rushed out. One of them helped the middle-aged man lying on the ground up. The rest of them stood in front of the middle-aged man, as they stared furiously at DMO Xian's direction. Overlord, Hell Palace has always been indifferent to worldly affairs, so how could they possibly hurt your woman? Overlord, it's better for you to investigate this thoroughly. DMO Xian's hands were placed behind his back in a dignified manner. His pair of peach blossom eyes glanced at those few people with a smile that didn't look like a smile. His gaze. However, as soon as it landed on those people, suddenly, DMO Xian's robes fluttered without any wind. Powerful and majestic energy followed closely behind and shrouded him. Bang, bang, bang. Just like the middle-aged man, those people were sent flying by the attack. On the ground, a few people were scattered all over the place. If he could make a move, he would definitely not make a fuss. DMO Xian couldn't even be bothered to look them in the eye. You. The middle-aged man was originally seriously injured by DMO Xian, and on seeing DMO Xian's barbaric action, he was so infuriated that he spat out another mouthful of blood. You're simply too much. The people from Hell Palace were arrogant and despotic, and cruel to the extreme. They had never suffered such humiliation before. Unexpectedly, the legendary overlord. Chapter 3043. Bully intolerably. DMO Xian narrowed his shimmering peach blossom eyes as he held in a faint smile and murmured these 4 words. Those few people from Hell Palace only felt an ominous premonition pervading their hearts. Their bodies instinctively wanted to escape. But, the next moment, another raging surge of profound energy came surging over. Everyone only felt a burst of tearing pain all over their bodies, tearing them apart. The few of them screamed out in pain at the same time. Since you all feel that this lord is bullying intolerably, if this lord doesn't accept these 4 words, wouldn't it be letting down your judgment of this lord? DMO Xian's icy cold voice was filled with chilliness. Those few people, how would they dare to open their mouths to refute? Those few people sprawled on the ground and curled up for a while. The middle-aged man, who was addressed as Old Lie, slowly supported himself against the wall behind him and stood up. DMO Xian, what exactly do you want? Please say it directly. He gritted his teeth as his scarlet eyes widened, suppressing the rage in his heart. DMO Xian raised his brows disapprovingly. This lord just wants to bully others intolerably. Those few people's faces sunk and all of them had an angry and embarrassed expression. But due to the disparity in strength between themselves and DMO Xian, they couldn't flare up at all. If it was any other ordinary person injuring their Hell Palace's people, even if they had to perish together, they would join hands to kill the other party. But the other party was DMO Xian. The rumored, mysterious and honorable Lord DMO Xian. Just based on DMO Xian's effortless strength, he had already pushed the group of them to the ground and even suffered internal injuries. They wanted to join hands to gang up on DMO Xian. This was an impossible matter. Moreover, It was highly possible that their act of joining hands would infuriate Dmo Xian and he would wash the Hell Palace with blood. There must be some misunderstanding. Lord Dmo Xian, please investigate clearly. Old Lai clenched his teeth, trying his best to make his tone sound more gentle. The few of them didn't forget to sneak a glance at the side, at the carriage that was covered by white muslin. Vaguely, they could see a slender figure sitting in the carriage. She must be the Overlord's woman. Old Lai's eyes flashed, and he suddenly knelt down in the direction of the palanquin. Madam. Madam, the Underworld Palace has been cultivating in the Underworld Palace recently, and has not harmed anyone, speaking until here. Lao Lai paused. Then, he turned his gaze to Evil Tyrant and said, the only time I've been able to go out is when Lord Hell and Lang Yen descended to the lower realms to repay the favor they owed me over the years. He raised his head carefully and looked in the direction of the sedan. Lord Hell and Lang Yen are heading down to the lower realm to settle some matters. They definitely won't hurt Madam. In the eyes of the people from the Underworld Palace, she was able to become the Overlord's woman. It was impossible for him to be someone from the lower realm. Xia Ba and Lang Yen had gone to the lower realm to take care of some matters. How could he have offended the Overlord's woman? This is definitely a misunderstanding. Your Majesty and Madam, please investigate this. Lao Lai added. As he spoke, he kowtowed a few times. Dong 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 sounds. Yiqing Luo felt pain in her ears. Her slender brows rose slightly. This Underworld Palace really cared about their brotherly ties. Evil Tyrant and Lang Yen had become crippled, thrown right in front of them. They had never thought of giving up on these two crippled people. They were still trying their best to speak up for these two crippled people. She curled her pink lips, as her chilly voice floated out from the muslin. Chapter 30-44. Old Lai's kowtowing action halted. The others were also stunned. Their gazes swiftly shot towards Xia Ba and Lang Yen. Lower realm. The Overlord's woman ran down to the lower realm. And coincidentally met Xia Ba and Lang Yen. Towards Xia Ba and Lang Yan's character, they had been together for many years, so they naturally understood it. Even in the lower realm. Once they didn't follow their wishes, hatred could possibly lead to a huge battle. This time, Xia Ba and Lang Yen had offended the Overlord's woman. Hearing Yiqing Luo's words, those Hell Palace's people who thought it was a misunderstanding kept their mouths shut, not daring to open their mouths. Since the Lord of Hell Palace hurt my woman, then it means that your Hell Palace is targeting my woman. Dmo Xian squinted his long peach blossom eyes. Those few didn't dare to reply. Hurt my woman, shouldn't I settle the score with you? Dmo Xian's lips curled upwards as endless cold rays and terrifying aura revolved around him. Hearing Dmo Xian's high-sounding reason, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but burst out laughing. Based on Dmo Xian's character, he would absolutely wipe out the Hell Palace directly. But in order to take care of her, he used the most complicated method. He only wanted to pave the way for her to personally take revenge. Looking at the man's tall and broad back view, Yiqing Luo's eyes curved as she couldn't hide the happiness and sweetness. However, Yiqing Luo felt happiness and sweetness. But to the few Hell Palace's people, this was simply a death sentence. The few Hell Palace's people slowly gathered together. Their expressions congealed as they occasionally looked towards Xia Ba and Lang Yen, who were sprawled on the ground. Their hearts were silently pondering on how to settle this matter. It was just to return a favor to the lower realm. How did they offend the Overlord? The Hell Palace's people who had always dissed the heavens and earth felt helpless. Just at this moment, a voice filled with hatred came nearer. That slut, what kind of madam is she? She's just a slut from the lower realm. As that voice got nearer, In the dark space, a white-robed lady who was filled with fairy-like aura swayed as she walked over. The lady was dressed in white gauze and her jet-black hair was fixed with a jade hairpin. As she approached, through the veil, Yi-Ching Luo could see the lady's face. She was exquisite, young, and very beautiful. That's right, Mei, who should have died in the battle between the Miao tribe and the Palace of Darkness. Yi-Ching Luo remembered. Under her design, Mei and Yan Zhenfei were squashed into meat patties by the group of semi-finished corpses. Plum actually escaped. Then, where was Yan Zhenfei? People from the mortal world. Lao Lai noticed Mei's choice of words and asked with a frown. Mei's venomous gaze swept across Yi-Ching Luo's carriage. Yes. She's from the lower realm. How can someone from the lower domain come to the earth domain? Lao Lai seemed to have found a breakthrough. His expression suddenly froze. Your Excellency, this is against the rules. Ha! A light and sweet-sounding sneer came from behind the veil. The girl's lazy voice was filled with endless disdain. Could it be that the Lord of Hell of the Underworld Palace going to the lower realms and attempting to destroy them and devour their space is in line with the rules? You! Old Lai's face turned red, unable to refute. Yi-Ching Luo. Mei's venomous voice interrupted the conversation between Old Lai and Yi-Ching Luo. Step by step, she neared the carriage. Finally, she stood in front of the four maids. Chapter 30-45. Balanced Historian. When these four words came out from Mei's mouth, Hell Palace's people's faces turned black. Once the balanced historian arrived, not only the Overlord's woman couldn't escape, their Hell Palace's people couldn't escape the crime of sneaking into the lower realm to create trouble. Who are you? How dare you come to the Hell Palace to create trouble? Old Lai immediately targeted Mei as he gritted his teeth and shouted angrily, You keep saying that the Overlord's woman is from the lower realm. Since she's from the lower realm, how did you know? How I know is not important. Mei stared at Yi-Ching Luo coldly. What's important is, she's a lowly person from the lower realm. She's not fit to stand beside the Overlord, nor is she worthy for the Overlord to back her up. The last part of the sentence. Mei's words were squeezed out from the gaps of her teeth. She totally didn't conceal her jealousy and resentment. Paw! The crisp sound of a slap rang out. Mei's body was smashed into pieces as she flew backwards and hit the ground. Lei stared at Mei and said coldly, Shut up, how dare you insult the Imperial Palace's future mistress. Half of Mei's face was swollen from the slap, and there was even a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. Imperial Palace. Future mistress. Ha, ha, ha. Mei let out a low laugh. While murmuring these words, he laughed like a madman. She laughed and laughed. Her laughter became extremely strange. Suddenly, Mei raised her head, her deep black eyes fixed on Dmo Xian, Overlord. These are your personal guards, their attitude is your attitude. Future mistress. Was promised to her by you. Am I right? Dmo Xian's eyes were fixed on Dmo Xian. His eyes were so dark that not even the slightest hint of emotion could be seen. It revealed some urgency and craziness. Faintly, she could sense a flash of pain and despair in that pair of eyes. Dmo Xian frowned slightly as his peach blossom eyes turned, but he had no intention to look at Mei. But Yi-Ching Luo could see a trace of impatience from Dmo Xian's eyes, but he seemed to be apprehensive about something. She could tell. Dmo Xian didn't want to waste time with Mei. But apparently, Mei had completely lost her mind. Seeing that Dmo Xian did not reply in time, she then took a few steps towards Dmo Xian's direction. His young and delicate face was twisted with madness. Overlord, she's just a lowly person from the lower world. She'll only be a burden to you if she stays by your side. She's just using your power to achieve her own goals. She doesn't deserve you, she doesn't deserve you. She screamed hysterically. His ferocious and terrifying pupils were bloodshot. She approached Dmo Xian. She raised her hands and tried to hug Dmo Xian. But, just as Plum was 3 steps away from Dmo Xian, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Dmo Xian. It was Yu. Chapter 3046. She doesn't have any ability and only knows how to rely on your power to put on airs in the lowly lower realm, committing all sorts of atrocities. What right does she have to stand by your side? Mei roared and roared as she suddenly burst into tears. Why? I've waited for you for so long. So long, you're not willing to take a look at me. A sudden sobbing tone. It made Yiqing Luo stunned. Through the veil, Yiqing Luo could clearly see that Mei's horribly distorted face which could no longer be restored, with 2 streaks of tears, crying pitifully. Yiqing Luo. This was simply too out of place. But it was precisely because of Mei's uncontrollable performance that Yiqing Luo was almost certain of the guess in her heart. Mei's words. It made Dmo Xian's expressionless handsome face gradually turn gloomy. That pair of deep and watery peach blossom eyes flashed past a sharp glint. But Mei apparently didn't notice the change in Dmo Xian's emotions. She covered her own face as she scolded Yiqing Luo viciously and like a white lotus, pitifully crying about her feelings towards Dmo Xian, while belittling Yiqing Luo to be worthless. While she was narrating, if she were to stand by Dmo Xian's side, what kind of benefits and help would she bring to him? Dmo Xian's brows creased tighter and tighter. The formless energy fluttered his robe. The powerful aura was incomparably overbearing. Just as Dmo Xian was about to fly into a rage, a clear voice was heard, whether I'm worthy of Xian or not, that's between me and Xian, what has it got to do with you? Mei's voice paused as she swiftly stared at the sedan. Since you're sincerely seeking guidance on why should I stand by Xian's side, then I shall be merciful and tell you. In the sedan, the young lady's voice rang once again. That voice was like a pearl falling onto a plate, extremely pleasing to the ear. Under the white veil, Mei seemed to see a pair of torch-like eyes, deadly, staring at her without blinking. The moment she was stared at by that gaze, Mei always felt an indescribable chill seeping into her skin, spreading from the bottom of her heart. Her body was trembling uncontrollably. Because Xian loves me. Yiqing Luo said it word by word, extremely slow and clear. Mei's eyes widened, and her pupils contracted little by little. A ruthless killing intent surged in his eyes. She staggered back a few steps and shook her head hysterically. He doesn't love you. He definitely doesn't love you. He's just playing with you, just playing with you. Of course, it's not just because Xian loves me. It's also because I'm young, because I'm beautiful. Because I'm stronger than you. Yiqing Luo totally disregarded Plum's crazy howls. He was still smiling as he continued to attack Mei. As for the benefits and help you can bring to Xian, I don't think it's important. Yiqing Luo lazily leaned against the back of the soft chair as her voice revealed a languid tone. Based on Xian's ability, he totally doesn't need your help. Mei's ferocious face twisted crazily again. Her scream turned into a roar. He looked extremely terrifying and irritable. Splash! I'll kill you. Kill you. Mei howled crazily. Her stomach full of grievances made her completely lose control as she pounced towards the sedan. The four maids immediately got into a defensive posture, just as May pounced over in rage. The smile in the sedan grew even more intense. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.